The WHO are having to continually reinvent, alter, and manipulate their treaty to get it through because people like you are awakening now and recognize that what they're trying to design is the perfect treaty that allows them to shut down dissenting voices, impose regulation when it comes to taking medicine, insist beyond the remits of any national constitution or democracy or republic that lockdown should be imposed, and they're very vague about what would constitute a pandemic or a climate change emergency. Deliberately vague is one of the signatures of globalist corruption. And the WHO are one of the augurs, harbingers and forebearers of the globalist corruption that is becoming so prevalent. And who is one of the key villains of this new globalist nightmare? Why, it's Dr. Sir Professor Uncle Anthony Fauci. That tiny little hobgoblin of corruption that somehow found his way into the heart of your nation and mind, with people saying, oh my God, is it wrong that I find him sexy? Yeah, it is.
So becoming a sex symbol in your late 70s.
That is not something that I aspire to.
And now for the first time, he's being invited to face justice, but will he face justice? Let me know in the comments and chat. Can there be justice for Fauci? It's an extraordinary story because where globalism and national bureaucracy meet, you get the kind of corruption that we absolutely have to oppose. So we're going to have a look at the WHO treaty. Essentially, they might as well put in it, in the event that there's a bad cough, we want to get Joe Rogan and lock him in a steel cube. Just for his benefit, really? More than anybody else's. They might as well say that in this treaty. So they continue to maneuver, but we have to maneuver more quickly. And will Fauci, at this Oversight House Select Subcommittee thing that sounds a little too bureaucratic to me, face anything like justice? And will his connection to the Eco Health Alliance and DARPA, and even more extraordinarily, bioweaponry, be exposed? So it might not be as significant as the chickens coming home to roost, but at least we're waking up to the fact that there are chickens and mouses that have been experimented on and treated appallingly. Let's have a look. Britain would have to hand over a bunch of their vaccines in the event of this treaty being passed, but who cares about that? What you'd also be handing over is your ability to vote and your ability to be free. That seems to me to be a little more of a significant issue. Now, here's our friend of the show. He might be tuned in because I told him we were talking about him. Dr. David Martin. He, when he came on the show recently, told us that the WHO, from its outset, has always been a racketeering kind of organisation. And people find this hard to believe, don't you? I mean, not you, but like normal people out there. If you go, the WHO is a racketeering organisation, people go, no, it's not. They're trying their best to make sure that everyone in the world can get Bill Gates' medicine while not being able to eat food not grown on one of Bill Gates' biofarms. Let's have a look at Dave Martin, a prominent voice in the pandemic period, explaining to us just exactly what the origins of the WHO are.
The World Health Organization was a criminal racketeering organization as defined by the Sherman Act and the Clayton Act. And by that I mean interlocking directorates defined under the Clayton Act, racketeering and express market domination and market controls, all of which are defined under the Sherman Act. This was a violation of the law when it was set up in the 1940s, and we have to go back to the foundation of what the WHO is and recognize since 1953 it has been exclusively a vaccine-promoting enterprise for the benefit of the people who have commercial interest in vaccines. If you read their opening charter and all of the hearings that gave rise to their opening charter from Bretton Woods in July of 1944 to its actually founding charter in 1950 and 53. What's missing from those conversations is who is writing the checks.
Okay, so let's have a look at Fauci, who is due to testify. He's scheduled to testify June the 3rd in front of the House Oversight Select Subcommittee on the coronavirus pandemic, with lawmakers expected to press him on the still unknown origins of the pandemic, the government's vaccine mandates, and other issues that remain politically divisive. More than 4 years after the outbreak began. That's how the Washington Post reports on this. Let's have a look now at some extraordinary facts about dual-purpose research. I remember hearing, with some astonishment, that this is a bioweapon. Do you remember that part of the coronavirus pandemic trust-mistrust axis? Do you remember sort of the murmurs of, it's a bioweapon? I knew it was a bioweapon straight away. Let's get into this. This is some great reporting from Public. In October 2000, Project for a New American Century, an influential foreign policy think tank, released its Rebuilding America Defenses policy documents. Now, this is all that Wolfowitz, Cheney, Germany, take down Iran, take down Iraq, take down Libya, take down North Korea. This was the document that perhaps foresaw and laid out the dystopia that we're being marched into. In the 21st century, the authors wrote, combat will likely take place in new dimensions. Whoa. In space, cyberspace, and perhaps the world of microbes, advanced forms of biological warfare that can target specific genotypes may transform biological warfare from the realm of terror to a politically useful tool. Who looks at the realm of terror? Oh God, look at it in there. The realm of terror. Well, there's actually some quite politically useful tools in there. We'll keep that bit. Well, you might want to wash your hands. No, it's okay. I was 6 feet away. Where did that come from? We just sort of made it up. The next year, senior policymakers ran 2 days of smallpox bioweapon attack simulation called Dark Winter, which is a horrible name. Okay, so we've decided to delve into the world of terror to come up with some ideas. We're thinking of calling it Dark Winter. Is that a Harry Potter film? The Johns Hopkins Center for Civilian Biodefense Strategies. Policymakers concluded during the simulation that they needed to lay the groundwork for a new biowarfare preparation proposals through a preventative program. In June 2002, scientist Michael Callahan became the State Department's clinical director for cooperative threat reduction programs. Callahan was sent to former Soviet states. That's weird. Now, this is reporting from Rolling Stone, like some time ago, when legacy media organizations like Rolling Stone would do like reporting that was kind of a little edgy. Remember, we're still attached to the brand names of New York Times, BBC, Rolling Stone, like, hey, this stuff's cool or informative or brilliant or authentic. That's gone. That's been hollowed out. Think about where journalists like Whitney Webb or Glenn Greenwald or Lee Frank, they don't work at those places anymore. They are online or they're in jail. To form alliances with scientists at some of the most secretive bioweapons laboratories in Russia and the former Soviet states. Ukrainian biolabs, anybody? The goal was to convert former bioweapons labs into facilities that could fight diseases by anticipating threats and creating vaccines. Now, straight away, you'll be thinking, what if in creating these threats, you actually do create the threat, like by just leaving a window open? Yeah, no, I suppose that could happen. Right, stay tuned. We can't continue to bring you this potentially paradigm-shattering information without the support of our sponsors. We got one for you right now. Stay to the end, please. Is it me, or does the future feel more insecure and uncertain? Wars, pandemics, lies, trickery. For those of you that are in the United States, there is a way to secure your hard-earned nest egg. American Hartford Gold makes it easy to protect your savings and retirement accounts with physical gold and silver. With one phone call, they can have physical gold and silver delivered right to your door or inside a qualifying retirement account like your IRA or 401k. American Hartford Gold is the highest rated firm in the United States with an A+ rating from the BBB, that's the Better Business Bureau, and thousands of satisfied clients right now. They'll give you up to $10,000 of free silver on your first qualifying order. This offer, I'm sorry to tell you, is only for customers from the United States of America. Call 866-505-8315. That's 866-505-8315. Or simply text BRAND to 998899. Then they'll know we sent you. Get up to $5,000 in silver and protect your future in this crazy, crazy world with some solid precious metals, literally made in stars. Now let's get back to the content. The Biological Weapons Convention prohibits the development of bioweapons but contains a loophole. As always, there's a loophole allowing pathogens to be developed and stored if they have justification for prophylactic, protective, or other peaceful purposes. Pandemic! Callahan went on to work as a program manager for DARPA. Coincidentally, he was in Wuhan at the start of the COVID-19 outbreak. What is he? Some sort of disease zelig? Oh, here I am, look. In 2003, Fauci's NIAID was assigned, 2003 by the way, when no one's heard of Fauci. No one's saying, is it okay to fancy this little goblin? Is it okay that I'm watching this little grey guy saying, wear a mask, wear 2 masks, I'm getting royalties on masks now. Is it okay that while he's saying that, I'm thinking, was assigned lead responsibility for civilian biodefense with a focus on research and early development of medical countermeasures against terrorist threats from infectious disease. And NIAID received a $1.7 billion budget to defend against bioterror. Because new potentially deadly pathogens such as avian influenza may be naturally occurring as well as deliberately introduced by terrorists, NIAID's biodefense webpage says NIAID biodefense research is integrated into its larger emerging and re-emerging infectious diseases portfolio. Great work, everyone. Placing biodefense under Fauci's supervision eroded the distinction between military and civilian scientific research. This is like in 2003, Fauci was over military research. So that means he was in charge of military stuff. There's a conflation of warfare and health. Remember, follow the science. This is a health emergency. You gotta help grandma. Listen to this sexy old octogenarian. Anyway, this is Fauci. I found myself again, never imagining that I'd be doing this, needing to learn from people I never thought I'd be learning things from. Look at him all misty-eyed. Namely, bioweaponers. Is this going to come up when he's talking to the House subcommittee? I hope so. This is in 2002. People who are our own bioweaponers in the US decades ago, international figures, people from other countries, the UK, and also importantly, defectors from the Soviet Union who had vast experiences of the ways of biowarfare. That's pretty weird, isn't it, guys? Remember when it was still Trump? Well, Donald Trump saying stuff like,
the State Department, or as they call it, the Deep State Department, if you don't mind. I'd like to have him go back and do his job. So does anybody have any question?
Look at this reliable little son of a... No one's mentioning, hold on a minute, mate, you've been involved in, like, military warfare and biowarfare for 20 years. I don't think that's an appropriate question. In 2004, the Biodefense Act outlined a response to bioterror attacks which would include aggressive research programs, including red teaming efforts to understand scientific measures that could be used to develop bioweapons. Intelligence collectors, the Act said, will be positioned to anticipate these threats. A 2004 paper from the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering and Medicine, Biotechnology, Research and Age of Terrorism, made clear the risk of this type of research. Biotechnology represents a dual-use dilemma in which the same technologies that can be used to better society can also be misused for bioterrorism with devastating results, the report stated. How dare they dress that up like that? Because this is what that amounts to. What if one day someone invents a terrible bioweapon and attacks us with it? Oh my God, yeah, that could happen. Okay, so we're going to invent a vaccine to that by making that and then inventing the vaccine to that. What? That's mental. Don't do that. Who's paying for it? You're paying for it. Are you getting royalties? You better believe I'm getting fucking royalty. Like, that's not a good idea. That's not a good idea. Don't say, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Or it's 50-50. Ask the audience. Call a friend. What would you say if someone said, because there's a possibility that there could be bioterror attacks in the future? And I remember when they were scaring us about that. It was around the time of terrorism, wasn't it? Like, there could be bio attacks. You cannot trust Iraqis or any brown or Muslim people at all. They could bio attack you. Oh, yeah, God, I suppose so. I see a lot of it on the news. Good. So we're going to invent the things we think they might invent and then invent vaccines for that you're paying. Is that cool? Right? That's why we don't have representative democracy, because you would say, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not paying for that. I'm not paying for that. Stop having these wars, you lunatics. Stop it. Stop it. You're not in charge anymore. You're all too old. You're absolutely mental. And I've got news for you, hun. You're not sexy. Yeah, over the next 2 decades, the US government would give many grants to potentially dangerous gain-of-function research. In 2009, USA granted $75 million predict grants to 4 groups, including EcoHealth Alliance. Controversy erupted in 2011 after 2 scientists altered H5N1 bird flu to make it more transmissible. Now, there's another thing. In a sensible democracy, if I asked you, or your mum, or your dad, or your nan, or your kids, or people down your street, or people on your block, I've got this idea. You know bird flu? Yeah, I see about it on the news all the time, like they're trying to scare the shit out of me with it. Yeah, well, we want to make it more transmissible. Oh, whoa, don't you want to make it less transmissible so that it can't be transmitted to humans? And why not give those favorite friends, the birds, a little break while you're at it? No, more transmissible. You heard me the first time. The NIH Biosecurity Board unanimously recommended that certain research methodologies not be published. Oh yeah, why is that? Those research methodologies were a surprise for your birthday and you ruined it. You're just like Anthony Fauci. In response, Fauci and Francis Collins, then director of NIH, wrote, "A flu virus risk worth taking on your behalf," in the Washington Post, arguing that the benefits of gain-of-function research outweighed the risks. Identifying threatening viruses can also facilitate the early stages of manufacturing vaccines that protect against such viruses in advance of an outbreak. That's so stupid. That's so stupid. Imagine if that was your children that said that your children went, "We just want to, in the event there could be an outbreak, we're going to create an outbreak." No, you stupid idiots, you'll spill it. Have you got children? All they do is spill stuff, innit? Right, yeah, have that, don't spill it. Yeah, do you have that cereal? Don't spill it. Then they just spill it. What's the point? That's what they're like. Daszak, Eco Health Alliance, Fauci. Don't spill it. No, we won't spill it. You spilled it, didn't you? After a tense meeting with Fauci and Collins in 2012, during which the members of the NIH Biosecurity Board reportedly signed a non-disclosure agreement, oh, what a surprise, the board reversed its previous recommendations and voted to publish the H5N1 gain-of-function research. Then in 2014, following multiple lab mishaps, we gotta stop these lab mishaps before one day they're going to lead us to have to make enormous profits and lock everyone in their home and legitimize centralizing an incredible... Carry on with those lab mishaps. President Barack Obama, remember that guy? Remember that hero? Hope, change, make stuff for Netflix now. What is the hope and change? Oh, froze gain-of-function research, with some exceptions, and established a Health and Human Service Committee with the power to veto NIH projects. Good, right. Thank God. We've got the old Health and Human Services Committee now. We'll be fine. 3 years later, Fauci and Collins changed NIH policy, removing the HHS committee's ability to block projects. From 2012 to 2020, the NIH funded at least 18 gain-of-function... They just blocked it. They blocked it, by the way. Look, they just went... Do you know who's getting on my nerves? It's the Health and Human Services Committee vetoing out stuff. How dare they? How am I supposed to change the world without being able to make bird flu worse? I can't do it. The HHS committee, they're ruining us. They're ruining me. From 2012 to 2020, NIH funded at least 18 gain-of-functions. You funded it. 18 gain-of-function projects costing a total of $48 million involving 13 institutions. It's chaos. 8 of these projects were approved after 2017 when the HHS committee's oversight had been significantly weakened. So they weakened them and ignored them. The historical evidence, as well as the scientific record, suggests that individuals involved in biodefense and pandemic preparedness. And remember, that's what the WHO treaty is all about. Pandemic preparedness. You don't want no more pandemics, do ya? Good. Shut up. Well, what you'll do is, we're in charge now. We didn't vote for that. Shut up. So, Joe Rogan, put that in a steel cube. Now, we're in charge. Take this medicine, get in your house. Let's generate profits for some of the most powerful interests in the world who will ignore, curiously enough, the laws and legislations and lockdown measures that we're imposing and congratulate yourself on democracy. In fact, we better start another war. There's some undemocratic people over there, bastards, and we better protect that more democratic nation adjacent to it. May have been responsible for engineering the SARS-CoV-2 virus. The defense and preparedness push that gained funding and momentum after 9/11 appears to have become a self-fulfilling prophecy. It didn't fulfill itself, it was fulfilled by corruption. In attempting to stop pathogens from transmitting to humans, scientists appear to have achieved the opposite. Oh, well, that's interesting. Luckily, it's facilitated an extraordinary ability to generate profit and impose lockdown, so it's not all bad news. The response to COVID-19 employed the same biodefense planning and structures. The National Security Council worked to craft COVID-19 policies. The Department of Defense officials were heavily involved in vaccine development and distribution. Out of 90 Operation Warp Speed leaders, 60 were military officials. It was a military operation. There it is. If 60 of 90 are military officials, how's that follow the science? How's that follow the medicine? If ever they had to discuss this publicly at one of their crazy committees, or heaven forbid on the legacy media, oh God, that's an oversimplification. Even though they work for the military, they're scientists. They wear white coats. They're there to help you, like Fauci. I mean, is it wrong to say this? But every time that guy recommends a vaccine, I'm thinking, baby, you can jab me, but I don't need no needle, baby. Despite the controversy surrounding COVID's origin, the Department of Defense awarded a new $3 million grant to Eco Health Alliance in December 2022. Just to let you know, there's some evidence to suggest that the Department of Defense have given further grants to the Eco Health Alliance, even though some people believe that the Eco Health Alliance's research may have led to the outbreak. Certainly there was an identifiable cleavage site in the blueprint for research that they later recognised when analysing early outbreaks of COVID. I think I've rendered that relatively well for a layperson. Okay, so, in spite of that, gain-of-function research is largely continuing apace. They're still doing it. It's still happening now. Across the US, there are privately operated invisible biolabs that slip through the cracks. That's good. What the hell is that? What's that just breezed past me? Oh, that's just an invisible biolab. Last year, public health officials found that one of these secret, privately owned biolabs in California was mishandling 1,000 laboratory mice. If you're lucky enough to have 1,000 laboratory mouses, you better handle them correctly. If they hurt you, you come back to me, yeah? As long as I've got these hands, mouses, you're never going to need a place to sit down. And samples of various infectious diseases. The National Science Advisory Board for Biosecurity issued a list of recommendations for stricter biosecurity oversight last year. These recommendations included extending oversight to less dangerous pathogens, removing current oversight exemptions for research associated with surveillance and vaccine development. The immense trust once given to scientific groups, public health institutions and pharmaceutical companies has been lost. In some ways, this is positive. Many people are now far more aware of scientists' fallibility, leaving us less vulnerable to future abuses of power. So, when Fauci attends that oversight subcommittee hearing, just pay attention and see what happens, see what questions get asked. I'm not suggesting that that committee will not be capable of asking relevant questions. I know there are some powerful critics of Fauci within government, Rand Paul, and some of the participants, I assume, in this subcommittee will be no friends of his, given his affiliation with the current administration, in spite of the fact that he's a public servant and is meant to have no affiliation with either of your two uni-party, let's face it, institutional political entities. Notice if it gets discussed correctly, out loud, significantly and notably. Mate, in 2002, were you involved in the oversight of bioweapons? Is it possible that you participated in the funding of research that went on in Wuhan? Why didn't this come up when you were identified as the person to be in charge of the response? Why? When it was like, this is the guy that's in charge. He's sexy. Trying to look at his face. Eyes up here, please, people. It's Fauci. Get away. He's not just a piece of meat for your amusement. Then it's like, oh, by the way, he's been over bioweapons for 20 years. He gets massive royalty payments and he's got financial connections to Wuhan via DARPA and the Eco Health Alliance. And he's done some crazy round of visits with the CIA attempting to ensure that the lab leak theory is crushed and quashed, presumably because he's got skin in the game, is spending all his time, along with his friends in the legacy media, ensuring that you believe it comes from a wet market. And what are we faced with now? A WHO treaty that will ensure that when, not if, this happens again, they will have the legislative tools to shut you down. But that's just what I think. Why don't you let me know what you think in the comments and the chat? Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to see more uncensored content where free speech can flourish, join our live stream. Click the link right here to watch the next video if you want to, or become a member of a growing movement. Download the Rumble app and you'll be informed every time we make a new piece of content. Stay free.